gosh, look at the crowd.
Come this way.
Those who spread goodness radiate happiness to everyone around them. Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
Welcome to LMDtv. I'm Ashwini Vethakan, and joining us this week on Talking Business is the CEO of MAS Intimates, Rajiv Dharmendra. Welcome to the show, Rajiv. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Rajiv, the apparel industry is known for its contribution to the nation's fight against COVID-19 in the form of care centers for patients infected with coronavirus. How does this support the industry's triple bottom line?
Yeah, so the triple P focus as far as the industry and organization was concerned, always at a very heightened level, Ashwini. Of course, it was a pandemic that sort of hit us like a bolt from the blue. So we were very concerned about lives and livelihood. So the people part of the focus was very much heightened initially until such time we understood the context of the challenge and how to address it. But very much so ingrained throughout this 18-month episode of this pandemic, we have been very focused on stabilizing lives and livelihood and continuing to invest in the planet, which was definitely the way forward for the industry post-pandemic, ensuring that we sustain a level of profitability that will enable us to continue in the fashion that we have, whether it was regarding taking care of our key stakeholders in the form of people, our planet, and all our customer and consumer environment.
The apparel industry employs 15% of the country's workforce. In your view, has the pandemic changed this figure greatly? And if so, what are the new initiatives in place towards human capital?
Yeah, that is another great question. It was a severe impact when it initially hit the shores of Sri Lanka and the environment in which we manufacture in the region, where there was, like I said, we were not too sure about the nature of the enemy and how intense the impact was going to be. And we were just covering up to make sure that we protected all our people. But very soon what we realized was if you were impacted by the virus, clearly for the reasons that we all know, our colleagues were not able to attend work, they were falling ill. And apart from that, there was an episode of anxiety when you do not know how grave the impact was going to be. And last but not least, there was also an impact of, say, social impact or social stigma, where the environment that you come from, the communities that you belong to, the villages that our team members are living in, for the same reasons, not for the wrong reasons, all for the reasons of anxiety, faced a lot of stigma, and the ability to come to work with peace of mind and to be able to carry out their functions and return home safely was greatly impacted. So we saw our factories' attendance levels and productivity dropping as low as 15%. In some cases, we had to shut down factories in the industry for a prolonged period of time. But we all knew from that time, whilst we were focusing on the people part of putting the solutions in place, we also had to look at the long-term solution, and that was the vaccinations. Ashwini, when we started, we all know we did not know when the vaccinations were going to arrive. And when these news was breaking in the latter part of 2020 that vaccines had been discovered and programs were going to come through, there was a greater sense of expectation and anticipation that something positive was going to come. But still, it took us 6 months because the problem was sort of solved in a laboratory, but it was not commercially and practically available. That process of just manufacturing vaccines and rolling it out, as intense and large task as it was the only way we could give the confidence, the stability that our industry needed. So that was the key part that we all focused on. So to answer your question, the first part was very impactful. We were hopeful that there won't be a second wave that was impactful as the first wave, but unfortunately we faced a second and a third wave. But the vaccination sort of caught up when the third wave came into place. And we as an industry worked very closely with the government authorities, with our political leadership, with one another. There's anxiety about what vaccines could. These days, you and I, we're on social media all the time, and we get feedback about the goods, the bads, and the concerns. So we had to work on a couple of things, right? Convincing colleagues, putting protocols in place, giving a safe environment. That's how we went about making sure that we kept the industry steadfast. We were fairly open as an industry in terms of allowing colleagues from the medical organizations, the support systems, from religious discipline to come in and see the environment that we provided in the garment industry to show that it's a safe, socially distanced, hygienic environment for our colleagues to be able to carry out their functions. So there's multiple things that we did. It was impactful at the beginning, and it has been a sort of a bumpy ride, but the strength of the bumps and the strength of the impact has reduced significantly from where things started, definitely aided by the vaccine.
In the face of challenges induced by the pandemic and falling disposable income, has the demand for ethical garments reduced or shifted in a negative manner?
I'd like to answer that question, Ashwini, in two ways. Firstly, as again you would have seen in the print media and on social media, there was significant impact in Europe and US, which are literally the second largest markets in our industry. And there were significant job losses, furlough, which basically speaks about colleagues staying at home, being paid some minimal levels of income. So naturally, when a colleague is not able to go out, markets are not open, and you're switching from a need-based demand compared to a want-based demand. So when you're in the apparel business and in the fashion industry, there's a lot of business that takes place on fashion trends. All of those got curtailed. The ability for our customers, the brands that we work with, to be able to pay the prices that they used to pay, give us the payments in the terms that they used to, all of those things got impacted. So there was definitely an impact. But the positives coming out of that was the supply chain, who could not withstand some of these pressures, perhaps moved to other areas of the business or other parts of the geographic capability, strengthening those who actually won in the process, being able to come out strong. Sri Lanka is fortunate to have 2, 3, 4 key players in the global apparel network who contribute to a significant part of the value addition of global apparel. Because of that, Sri Lankan industry still remains very strong and supported by some strong manufacturers. So the bounce back, the intensity of the impact was severe, but the bounce back has also been equally strong, Ashwini. And I think that's a pertinent point here. The second part of your question with regards to buying behavior, I think we all now lead a healthier lifestyle because we have spent prolonged times at home, which has sort of accelerated our need to remain healthy, be more conscious about our purchases, because we're not too sure how those things were going to span out. So a lot more focus has gone into sustainable product, what goes into landfill. You don't see as many aeroplanes flying around, so the impact on environment, all have taken a heightened focus. So what we see going into the pandemic from a sustainable focus is quite different to what has come out of the pandemic. And actually, it's an opportunity that has come out. So I feel there was an impact, but we have come out stronger, but slightly in a different marketplace to how it was when the pandemic started.
Rajiv, what is your view on the impact of global competition on the Sri Lankan apparel industry?
My view is that we play in we are a nation of 20 million plus people. We employ 500,000 colleagues as an industry in Sri Lanka, and we have always remained very agile, very resilient, human capital in terms of Sri Lanka. That has served us well even during this pandemic. You know, the challenges that we have all faced in our past. But this time around, it's no different. We have come out very strong, a very resilient nation. So the global pressures have not gone away. It has been all around even before, and it continues to be there even now and during the pandemic. I think what featured well was if we had a good geographic spread within the country in terms of where apparel manufacturing was taking place, depending on where the impact was, we were able to shift around capacities from one region to another to be able to still keep up with the global demand. Initially, when the global markets was closed, we did have a problem on demand. So there was a demand side impact to our business. When global markets reopened, spurred on by vaccinations being made available for consumers, it was now up to us to keep our manufacturing, our supply chain awake and really nimble to be able to react to those demands. But wave 2 and wave 3 hit us quite badly, where factory closures due to attendance levels and challenges of that nature. But due to the geographic risk mitigation of some of the industry leaders, we were able to maybe drop the ball in one area but catch it in another. Even better still, if we had some international reach in terms of manufacturing, either regionally or globally, we were still able to hold on to those orders as a nation, although all the value creation was not taking place in our own country. The value addition in terms of design, in terms of innovation, and all of those development activities were still held on in Sri Lanka, but the manufacturing itself may need to have necessarily moved to one of the regional countries to be able to still fulfill the customer's expectations. So we were able to weather the storm. That's the best way to answer your question, and come out strong if we had those geographic risk mitigation capabilities spread within our own country as well as some regional countries. And those companies were able to manage the situation better.
And on that note, we'll be going in for a short break. Welcome back to the show as we continue our conversation with the CEO of MAS Intimates, Rajiv Dharmendra. Rajiv, how has design, innovation and R&D approaches evolved in the past year and a half in Sri Lanka's apparel industry?
Great question. The Sri Lankan apparel industry, which now spans four, possibly going to the fifth decade in terms of prominence of play into our economy in Sri Lanka, as well as still holding joint prime status as the frontrunners of exports out of Sri Lanka, has always invested in creating value. So whether it is innovation, whether it's research and development, we're always upping the game in terms of the value that we create for our customers and help the customers' brands create for the consumers. Sri Lanka is a nation and an industry that has always won on bringing in a focus on innovation, focus on R&D, focus on value-added garments, has always helped us separate ourselves from regional competition, global competition. So even during the pandemic, we have maintained that focus. If I may speak to a specific example, we have not been able to welcome customer partners into our country because of global travel restrictions, nor have we been able to visit our customer partners and have those engagement opportunities as we have done so successfully in the past. But now, on top of the work that we have done on product innovation, research and development on material and product, we have brought in another angle on our digital capability. So things that we used to do in terms of doing garment fits, sampling, with the help and the assistance of our customer, we have transformed that game completely digitally, which has brought in a lot closer play. So although there are some aspects to the industry and the engagement model that have changed, newer facets like connectivity and speed, we would see a customer perhaps once a quarter, once in 4 months when they would travel to region, or we would speak to them maybe once a month or once in 2 months to follow up on things that we have already discussed and agreed. But now, due to this digital focus, staying at home and working, connecting in offices as required, we have flipped the game in terms of frequency of connect. That has definitely lent into a business advantage for organizations and organizations such as ours and the industry that we have in Sri Lanka. Mind you, a very high skilled industry, an industry that is backed by strong talent and proficiency in the ability to converse in English. It's very high compared to regional countries. And in a digital environment where communication has become that much more important, it has played into our advantage. So we have lost out in some ways, but gained in so many other ways. That's the way I would read the impact of our focus on innovation, R&D, and specifically technology during the pandemic.
In recent news, a roadmap to a greener apparel industry in Sri Lanka was launched by HSBC and the International Union for Conservation of Nature. It was supported by various organizations, including the Joint Apparels Association Forum. In your opinion, what will be the impact of these recommendations on the apparel industry?
Oh, it's absolutely positive. It's good to see global organizations such as HSBC connected with the United Nations and giving a heightened level of focus. We are already beginning to hear. We were already beginning to hear that even before the pandemic, with the new generation of consumers. We call them Gen Z in our industry, playing a heightened level of importance for sustainable garment. Would they necessarily pay the purchasing power of that generation might not be at the level of the other two preceding generations for reasons associated with age and income levels, but nevertheless, they're great influences. That was always there, but this level of focus has now heightened post-pandemic, and thanks to all the efforts, as you mentioned, by groups such as the HSBC, are taking that to another level of attention and focus. What we have seen in our business is that the focus on sustainable manufacturing, supported by sustainable product, impact on landfill has gone to another level. So I feel this is just moving the needle in the right direction. The overall need for garment has not changed, but buying garments responsibly and what you buy has definitely been influenced. But we are ready for that. The industry is ready for it. I can see the supply chain connecting very well with this initiative as well.
With around 43% of our apparel export market being in the EU, what could be the implications of a possible GSP Plus on the apparel industry? How do you predict the industry to react to this?
On the face of it, Ashwini, without scaring anyone who's listening to our discussion, it will be a disaster if we do not handle this very well. Because 43% of our exports do end up in the Europes, and we have a big challenge. It's not that we have not seen these kind of challenge and not overcome it in the past. As you know, we have had these episodes twice, that we had to deal with. But this time around, I think we are a couple of things. One is we need to focus very much on bringing in value to the garments that we supply. So it is not purely only a price play. If you drive productivity and you add value, I'm convinced the customer, even if it's a European destination, will continue to come to place business in Sri Lanka. I think the government also has to do its fair share, as they had done in the past, in working with the European governments to participate, to cooperate, and still somehow carry this benefit for our industry. But due to two things, one is what I mentioned, which is the value addition and productivity improvement capability that will keep us still competitive on value-added garments, as well as some regional manufacturing capability where we retain some value here in Sri Lanka on creating a product, but use perhaps market access to duty-free manufacturing in regional countries to still be able to hold our fair share of the market. I think that is the interim, but as you know, GSP Plus, loss of GSP Plus is not only impactful for the garment industry, it's to other industries as well that have markets in Europe, and we have to be very conscious about how to tackle it, and the government, I feel, has to play its part in helping us achieve that status.
Well, this has been an insightful conversation, but unfortunately, we've reached the end of our segment. Thank you for joining us on the show this evening, Rajiv.
Ashwini, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the very best and all the viewers to stay safe. Thank you.
Coming up, we have the latest from Life on Earth. Stay tuned.
You love the feeling of being renewed. To stay beautiful every single day. To breathe just like we do. Because you are truly delicate. Protecting the ones who've been with us through the years. With Sayalac Care, the only wood coating that truly protects you. Sayalac Wood Coatings from JAT.
Welcome back to the show, and here's the latest from Life on Earth. Gen Z has a strong sense of what matters to them and what they value despite not having joined the workforce yet. According to Lewis's report entitled New Rules, How is Gen Z Changing the World of Work? The global marketing agency notes that the generation is aware of social issues, with 54% saying they would refuse to work for a company that does not share their values. However, while they are idealistic, many are also willing to compromise for the sake of stability and security. Gen Z has strong views on how leaders should behave, with many of them looking up to creators and innovators who have expanded their industries or created new ones rather than managerial style leaders. Healthcare is the most important societal issue for Gen Z, according to 33% of the respondents consulted, followed by climate change at 30% and safety and gender equality at 26%. When it comes to the responsibility for tackling social issues, a majority 74% of respondents believe that it should be shared between the public, private and third sectors. Meanwhile, an overwhelming majority of 96% say businesses should be involved in solving social problems. 51% and 49% of those consulted say they learn about these societal issues through YouTube and TV respectively. As for the workforce, 51% of those polled cite employers' commitment to providing personal growth opportunities as the most important factor in evaluating employment opportunities. On the other hand, 39% highlight the importance of companies' values when doing so. Furthermore, 43% of respondents feel that CEOs should be judged by their ability to innovate and be industry leaders. Additionally, 57% say CEOs should be removed if they display a lack of ethical behavior. And that's all the time we have for you this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.